Got to get your priorities right.
Worked out, yeah, certainly. All right, look, let's move on to the book, Tim. Prisoners of Geography specifically. So I was gifted this book on Christmas, and I really just had the most glorious couple of days sitting in front of the Boxing Day Test match, reading it. It was fantastic. I am afraid that because of the scope of geopolitics, a lot of it kind of gets lost, because for me, the interesting part is looking at the macro view, looking what shifting power looks like, what sort of underdog influences could topple the favorite. What does an infrastructure project really mean? I don't know, these sort of questions. You probably have a much better insight into me as to why geopolitics isn't, kind of one of the primary themes of the very popular podcasts or maybe more popular books and so forth. I suppose yours is an exceptional outlier to the idea of maybe geopolitics not being an extremely popular field, but nonetheless, I think a really cool way to sort of introduce it as an exciting topic would to be for you to talk about the Arctic. We look at it through the lens of the Arctic, because it's the last chapter of the Prison of Geography, and you give a brilliant overview of what's going on up there at the moment by analyzing this seemingly unimportant, boring, and uninhabitable giant sheet of ice. But the truth is that there's a lot more happening there. So can you give us some flavor and maybe explain what's happening in the Arctic?
You mentioned geopolitics and the macro, and I agree with you. I think a macro view, especially for a general audience, is essential. But I also think that if you want to give the macro view, you better know the micro view as well, because I don't think you can do one without the other. It's when you have drilled down to a certain level. I'm not an academic expert. You can then do macro, because if you don't get the detail, you don't get the wider view as well. On the Arctic, again, I don't know how micro this is, but it's worth knowing in the Arctic. When I wrote this book 5 years ago, the figures are more or less the same because I've looked them up recently. Russia's got 28 icebreakers, and America's got 2. I mean, that's tiny little detail, but when you know that, and then you know how many troops Russia has in the Arctic, how many cities it has in it, etc., etc. It's very easy to then get the macro view that if there's going to be a competition in the Arctic, I think I know who's going to win it. And it's going to be Russia.
Is that even taken into account all of the NATO icebreakers as well? From memory, I think there was maybe Finland at 8, Norway had a few. Them together as a force, or
but they don't have the right and the jurisdiction to be up there. Off the 200 miles of exclusive economic zone, off the coast of Russia, and Russia again, you just look at the map and you see they've got half the Arctic, and they claim more than they've actually legally got. So it's this alleged wasteland, and yet it isn't. And it's worth getting a map that looks top down at the Arctic. Classically on a world map, it's up there. A map of Europe. In Britain, we see, Britain's here, Europe's there, and there's the Arctic up there. But if you do a top down, you see it's this big round lake, ocean. And then you see which people border it. It's 7 or 8 nations. And that's when I go back to these things about the micro, like 28 icebreakers versus 2, how many troops they've got, how many bases they've got. So Russia is in a much better position to take advantage of 2 things that's happening, both because of global warming. One is access to the oil and the gas. There is, so much up there. You can't get at it because of the climate, but if it becomes more attainable, they will get it. They will attempt to get it. And, given that their coastline is so long, their 200 miles of exclusive economic zone is obviously a lot more than everybody else's combined. And then the second thing is the trade routes. If the northern route opens up 12 months a year that ships can go through it, then they're going to be stopping at ports, and they're going to be dropping off and getting goods and equipment, and you charge money for that. And so Russia will have that as a cash cow, and other trade routes will slightly diminish. Cairo, Egypt, for example, Suez Canal, slightly. So Russia is very well positioned that if the climate modeling is correct, they will take advantage of it. The other Arctic countries, Canada, They have a lot of experience, but they have a smaller population, smaller GDP, not than Russia, but certainly than America. And it was Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, that said, we have villages on the Arctic, they have cities. And it's true that they do. So it's been 5 years since I wrote that, and it has all happened very, very slowly. There has been more and more economic interest in there. The big energy companies are up there. But it's slow. Russia, if you look at Russia's militarization of it, they have begun to open up, I think, more than 12 of the bases that I was going to say snowballed, that they mothballed when they didn't have any money at the end of the Cold War. After '89, they mothballed all these Arctic bases, but they're beginning to open them up again. And, there's a reason for that. And we've just been through them.
Do you think that it's, is it, assuming the climate modeling was perhaps wrong or slower, is it still possible that access to technology could give access then to the oil and the trade routes nonetheless, and therefore it is as important? Because you could, if you look at it at a big macro view, the way that many policy responses are very sluggish to the response of climate change is because you can't definitively say the model is going to be right. And therefore that might be an excuse for, say, the US and Canada and maybe Northern Europe to be like, well, we're actually going to take it as seriously as Russia is. Whereas Russia has, they've got a much worse hand, don't they? So they kind of have to put their chips into one or two big buckets. Whereas,
and they have, Putin has put a hell of a lot of chips into the Arctic, and also you will not find an American president or a British prime minister, well, we're not an Arctic nation, a Norwegian political leader making the sort of bold statements that Putin makes about the Arctic and about the riches that they say they're going to get from it. They are betting heavily on it, and you can follow the money, as the old Watergate saying was. And when you follow the money of what Russia is spending it on, it's spending it on nuclear-powered icebreakers, on oil exploration from their big, huge energy companies. And when you look at their Arctic brigades, where you look at where they're putting missiles, how they're opening up these bases, they are putting chips. They're confident, and already, when I wrote 5 years ago, I think one or two ships had gone through in the 2-month gap that there was, but now it's a regular occurrence. It's not a major world trade route yet, but it's certainly more and more people are looking at it, and more ships are going along the northern route across the top of the world.
Yeah, it's funny, some of the details of what Russia has been doing to try and win soft power over the region. Like they wanted to get the ocean renamed the Russian Ocean.
That's right.
They planted a titanium flag.
That's right.
Whatever
Still
it was.
there, as far as we know.
Exactly. So right at the point of the North Pole under the ocean. Then they tried claiming that the Siberian Shelf or something was like sovereignty of Russia, and this kind of made its way half into the.
There is a legal argument to be made about that. It's the Lon-Somerov continental shelf that does stick out from underneath Siberia, and it does extend right into almost the middle of the Arctic Ocean. And there is a legal argument that gives you more jurisdiction, but it will not stand up in a court. The EEZ, the Exclusive Economic Zone, nearly every country in the world abides by those. As far as I know, Russia accepts them. As an aside, it's a similar debate. At the moment, Turkey is claiming it has a continental shelf that comes out from the Turkish mainland into the Aegean and further into the Med. And it's using that as its claim against Greece and Cyprus, because all sorts of gas and oil have been found, especially off the coast of Cyprus.
Sure.
And so Turkey is saying, which doesn't recognize EEZs. Turkey recognizes the concept of the continental shelf, and it's using that as its legal basis for putting its survey ships and indeed warships in what are essentially Cypriot sovereign waters.
Oh, okay. That makes things delicate, doesn't it?
Oh, it got so delicate last year, and France is very much supporting Cyprus as an EU ally on this.
Okay.
There's a related issue which comes to Libya. The Libyan government in Tripoli, which Turkey supports, not the opposition government, and the Turkish government have made an agreement that they have that their two territorial waters meet, but they meet exactly where the Cypriot waters are. And France has taken Cyprus's side on this. And last year, there was a Turkish ship heading towards Libya, which the French could interdict because for weapons smuggling. There was a Turkish warship by it, and the Turkish warship locked its radar onto the French warship, meaning it's targeting it. Mm-hmm. That's the thing you do before you press fire. Two NATO countries, that's how
dicey things are. That reminds me of the great anecdote of this guy in the Soviet Union. I lost his name, but he saw a blip on his radar screen, right? And he sort of took it upon himself to not initiate the auto response nuke codes. I'm sure you're familiar with this anecdote. I forget all the details of it.
No, I'm not. I'm just thinking.
Okay, no. Well, then you should certainly look it up. And it's frustrating. I don't remember the guy's name, but supposedly he was sitting there in one of these observation towers, however it worked in the Soviet Union, and he saw what looked like an incoming attack on his radar. And he has, he's within the Soviet system, right? So he's a very strong protocol, which he must follow at all fucking costs. And he, as the story goes, he double checked that it was the attack that this radar was telling him it was before he passed it up the chain of command. And him doing that double check, changed the course of history, supposedly, because a good Soviet soldier doesn't double check. He just sends it up the chain and off, it's gone. There's no getting it back at that stage.
That's an interesting connected point is the culture. And in Western culture, there is a degree up to a point of taking your initiative. Mm-hmm. It's not like that in some systems. It's so rigid. You're so frightened of taking initiative. Nothing ever gets done, or mistakes are made. That looks like it was almost one of them. I've just been writing recently about a similar sort of scenarios, but in space, because I think that's what's coming now. Killer satellites, they're already there. The Russians tested one last year. They clearly fired a projectile from a satellite at another satellite. The first time it's thought that it's been done in space, and did it in proximity to an American satellite as well. Mistakes up there may be mistaken for precursors to massive wars, because the future war will try to take out your opponent's satellites that can see everything that's happening on the ground. And if you do that, there is a danger that there's suddenly one side is blind, and it might panic and think there could be a nuclear attack coming. Sure. I think that this is one of the danger areas we're heading to, but we've always had